Hey there, it's Simon Hurley, and I'm here at Scrapbook.com with Ranger Ink. I'm their newest signature designer, and I'm super excited to be sharing a bunch of different projects and ideas using my new Simon Hurley Create product line. In this lesson, I'm going to be diving into some out-of-the-box ways to use background stamps and get a little bit more use out of them to expand kind of what you're creating and create some really fun backgrounds. So let's start out by talking a little bit more about how to get more use out of your background stamps. For example, we created these backgrounds in a 6x6 design so that you can stamp them this way or this way. So whether you're using the splintered background stamp, which is a wood grain design, you can have your wood grain going horizontally or vertically, which is really awesome. Now with this painted lines background stamp, I've created it so you can use one ink. Let's use Remember Me for this one. I'm going to ink up the background, and then I can take my piece of cardstock and put it right onto the background. And I'm going to make sure to apply good pressure so that it's going to stamp really nicely on here. So what I love about this stamp is you can totally leave it here. You can stop and you can create a design right on top of this, which I think looks awesome. But you can also go right back in, and I'm just going to ink up the stamp again, but I'm going to ink up in the other direction. So here I flipped the stamp. I'm inking up these lines. Then I'm going to take the piece of cardstock with my lines going vertically, and I'm going to stamp it down onto the background with the lines going horizontally. I'm going to just place my cardstock down. And there we go. And when we lift it off, we have a really cool grid pattern on our card. And with this stamp, you can also stamp the lines by themselves and then move it over just a little bit and stamp again. So you can get more lines in the background and fill in those spaces right in between. Now with this card, I created a fun inked background, and then I used my flower garden background stamp and stamped it down, and then I cut out some of the images. So I cut out one of the flowers and some of the leaves as well, and that creates a really great image by itself. So you don't have to just use the backgrounds as backgrounds. You can cut out little portions and use them as kind of a focal point on the card. Now I'm going to share how to use a background stamp like this and get different colors in different areas of the stamp. It's a really fun technique, and it also kind of looks a little bit watercolored, which I think is really cool. So I'm going to flip over this flower garden background stamp. This is red rubber, so it's going to stamp really nicely as we're applying our ink onto it. So I'm going to start off with Bee Sting here. I'm going to make sure there's lots of ink on my blending tool here, and then I'm just going to go right in with my blending tool and add that ink onto the surface of my images. Now this is going to ink up the image. It's not going to give as much ink as you would if you just applied the ink pad directly to the surface, but it's going to give enough so that we can color in the images a little bit more detailed like this. And I'm using the edge of the blending tool. You're going to get a little bit of ink on some other images like the leaves and things like that, but it just adds to the fun watercolor look, so it's totally fine. Then I'm going to grab Overzealous, which is that bright green color. I'm going to make sure there's lots of ink onto the blending foam, and then I can go right into here and add that onto the area where there's leaves. So I'm just going around and dabbing that right onto the surface and making sure there's lots of ink onto each image. And if it goes onto some of the other flowers, again, that's totally fine. I'm going to fill in some of these larger flowers with Tripleberry, and just using that blending tool to pounce over top of the image to make sure there's lots of color on each one. To finish this off, I'll go in with some Clear Skies, and I'm just going to tap that right onto some of the flower images that are left. Then I'm going to take my distress sprayer with some water in it, and I'm going to spray over top of those flowers, and I'll bring in a piece of cardstock and stamp it right down. And again, you don't need a ton of pressure when doing this because there's all that water on there that's going to help the ink get picked up. Let's add a little bit of pressure. And then once you lift that off, you get a really beautiful colored design. And I just love how this looks with that watercolor look to it. But you get each individual image colored, which I think is really awesome and a great way to create the background. So now I'm going to take some of the letters from my Space Training stamp set. I've taken out the H, E, and Y, so I'm going to spell the word hey, and then I'm going to use the little sentiment that says, "You've got this." And when using these letters like this, I like to line them up on my craft sheet, and then to make sure they're straight, I'll go in with a sheet of cardstock beneath the letters and just push them up a little bit. And that's just going to make sure they're going to be straight on my card. And then I'm going to grab my acrylic block and add that right onto there. So then I'm going to take my archival ink, and I'm just going to ink up the sentiment. And then we can stamp this right down onto the cardstock. Then I'm going to use the "You've Got This" sentiment from the Space Training stamp set, and I'll stamp this right below the sentiment that we've created. So I just love how versatile this alphabet is on the space grading stamp set and all of the fun sentiments that coordinate along with it. So you can use them alongside a more sophisticated card like this. So then I'm just going to add a little bit of tape runner to the back of the card panel that we've created. Just going to line that up with the top edge and then press it down. And here we've created that really fun card. I love how you can take the background stamp and add a bunch of different colors to it to get a little bit more variety with your stamping. Thanks so much for joining me in this class. I really enjoyed sharing a little bit more about how to use background stamps with you and get some more use out of them as you're crafting. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and want to see more from Scrapbook.com, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a message. Happiness is life handmade.